Hello. Hi. If you don't know, I'm Broadway trash. I made a huge rant rave thing about Broadway last night on my Snapchat, and somebody was like, OMG, you should do Broadway Recs. And I'll be honest, it's not a video I thought about doing because I feel like I don't have enough experience. I don't know. I also kind of felt like the video I made last summer called How I Got Into Musicals kind of gave a lot of good recs in there. But I decided to fuel my trashness and, you know, just give you some Broadway recs, I guess. A couple disclaimers. I have not listened to all the musicals I should have listened to. There are a lot of classic musicals that I just haven't listened to or haven't gotten into, and so don't take this list as the be-all end-all of musical recs because literally I'm very behind. Secondly, if you actually want to follow people who are really into Broadway and who see Broadway shows literally all the time, my really good friend Kristen Hippie, she's currently in LA right now, but once she moves back to New York, she's all about Broadway. And also my good friend Sibby at Cookies Nom Nom / Cookie Addictions. She is in Brooklyn, so she sees Broadway shows all the time. So if you want people with more knowledge than I have, those are some good places to check out first. So I decided to split up this video into a couple different categories because I have a lot of recs, so get ready. If you're not into musicals, you will be after this. The little subcategories we have: classics, so these are musicals that I feel like have been around the longest and they're super well known, so if you haven't listened to them, you should because they're pretty basic. I have a small list of anniversary concerts just so we can talk about them because I think they're very important. There's a list of recent film adaptations that I like a lot, and I just get into musicals very easily with film adaptations. Then there's a list of new classics that you've probably heard of because they've been getting a lot of hype in the past 5 to 10 years. And then last but not least, we got some underrated gems that you may or may not know about that are pretty recent. So we have a lot. Let's just get started. First of all, if you don't know what I'm talking about, musicals / Broadway are basically shows that have music in them, and they're usually put on in New York or West End. All right, so let's talk about some classics. These are musicals that are kind of old, but still really well known. First, obviously, this one just won for Best Revival, Hello, Dolly. Also, I will say almost all of these classics that I'm naming have movies made out of them. And that's kind of how I've fallen in love with them. When I was growing up, I watched a lot of movie musicals. Barbra Streisand is in the original movie, and it's still just, really good. It's about a woman who acts as a matchmaker, but she herself is not actually married as far as I know. I haven't seen it in a long time, so forgive me, but it also has Put On Your Sunday Clothes, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. Oklahoma is really underrated as a classic, but it's a Rodgers and Hammerstein show, so it should be more well known than it is at the moment. I grew up listening to it because I have family from Oklahoma, but it's really good if you like Western stuff. Also, really catchy. Really catchy, just saying. And the movie is just one of the best movie musicals I've ever seen, honestly. My Fair Lady is another classic. This one also has a movie musical. I believe Julie Andrews was one of the original stars of it, so they have that kind of cast recording out there. This one is about a woman who, I don't remember the full story, but she basically ends up having to change herself into this fancy person, and she learns how to become a true woman or whatever. It's not one of my favorite classics, but it's still really good for knowledge about Broadway. Also, I have heard rumors that there may be a revival coming next year, so you heard it here first, folks. The Sound of Music. If you haven't listened to The Sound of Music, which I feel like is arguably one of the most well-known Broadway shows in the history of forever, you have to listen to that because that is the best. Julie Andrews, guys. Can we just? Also, that movie musical I think might be the best movie musical of all time. Next one, another lesser known one. They recently had a revival of this on Broadway. Fiddler on the Roof. This one is, I believe, about Jewish customs, and it's about marriage and girls growing up and Jewish things. It's really catchy too. If I Was a Rich Man. Na 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 na. West Side Story. Okay, West Side Story I didn't see until I was in middle school, but it is one of the best musicals I think of all time as well. It's loosely based off of Romeo and Juliet, but it's set in this city. I want to say it's New York, not sure if that's true. It really shows off Puerto Rican culture, and Lots of really catchy songs, really, really fun, also tragic, but I don't think it's quite as old as some of the other ones, but I still consider it a classic because it's kind of a staple on Broadway, and that is Chicago. I watched half of the movie recently. It's not my favorite ever. The movie is okay. It's still got some classic songs, like All That Jazz and The Cell Block Tango, so it's like a good classic if you want to see what Broadway is really like, you know. Chicago is about a woman who kills her husband, and it's basically about women killing their loved ones and going to jail and trying to get out of jail, and it's a lot about Chicago and like the corruption of that city. The anniversary concerts, I feel like there are more that I don't know about, but I only have a couple to talk about. Anniversary concerts are really good because you can see a show, but it's with people that you may recognize, and it's usually like in a concert setting, so you don't get the full effect of the show, but you also get to learn a little bit about the show. That's how I first experienced Les Mis. Speaking of anniversary concerts, Les Mis is a classic. I recommend it full-heartedly. Like, one of the best shows I've ever seen. I've seen it on Broadway. I saw the movie. The movie was also really good. Even though people hate on it all the time, I enjoyed it heavily. Yes, Les Mis. The 25th anniversary concert is really great because it has Ramin Karimloo, love him. I believe it also has Samantha Barks, can't remember her last name, and Nick Jonas, which is the real reason I watched it in the first place. I'm serious. Let's see, Les Mis. So Les Mis is about a guy who steals a loaf of bread, and he ends up running from the law for a while, and then he adopts the daughter of this woman who is poor and dies, and then that little girl grows up and falls in love with a guy who is basically rebelling against the French government. But yeah, that's Les Mis in a nutshell. It also has a book, which I've read half of. Phantom of the Opera. I didn't fall in love with Phantom of the Opera until last summer, and I would still say I'm just like meh about it. I can understand why people love it, and it's good, and it also has a movie adaptation, but I hated the movie adaptation when I saw it the first time, so be wary. But the 25th anniversary edition is great because it has Ramin and Sierra Boggess, who are basically like the wonderful stars of Broadway at this moment. They're in like every good anniversary concert. They're great. And I would recommend watching that anniversary concert for sure because everybody tells me it's beautiful, and one day I will see it, I promise. And then the one that makes no sense that I just have to talk about because I was watching it last night, Chess in concert. It's not really an anniversary concert, although that's kind of what it is. It's just Chess in concert. It has Idina Menzel and Josh Groban and Adam Pascal, and Chess is like a really underrated, crappy musical. It's not one of the best ones. However, it does have a couple gems in it, and it's very interesting, especially because it kind of revolves around the Soviet Union and the Cold War. I don't know, it's interesting, and it's Josh Groban, so like you might want to watch the concert or just listen to Idina Menzel sing Nobody's Side because literally that is one of my favorite songs of all time. Recent film adaptations. There are a lot of these because I feel like almost every year we have somebody adapting a musical into film. Still waiting on Wicked. It's only been 10 years. A lot of people don't like movie musicals because they will cast celebrities rather than like actual Broadway singers. And I can understand how that's frustrating. However, a lot of the musicals I've fallen in love with recently and over the past couple of years are from movies because they're very accessible that way. So don't deny them even if they're like kind of cheesy and not the best singing. One of the best ones though, Mamma Mia. We don't talk about Mamma Mia enough because basically it's just opera songs put into a musical, but the movie is one of my favorite things of all time. It's just really fun and happy and cute, and it has Meryl Streep and Amanda Seyfried, and I just like, it's super well done, honestly. I think it was really good. I would recommend Mamma Mia if you're like really into pop music, but you're like, I don't really know if I like Broadway. You probably do. Mamma Mia is about a girl who is early 20s, don't know her age. She is engaged and she's about to have her wedding, and her mom didn't tell her who her father was. So she's trying to figure out who her father is, and she finds out it's one of 3 guys. So she invites the guys to her wedding without telling anybody, and it's so funny and really entertaining, and ABBA, just so good. Rock of Ages. This one is forgotten about. It's similar to Mamma Mia in that it's basically just 80 songs put into a musical format. And I saw Rock of Ages because my parents really liked the 80s, and also I was curious. And they cast some really interesting people for it, like Julianne Hough and Tom Cruise and Alec Baldwin, and It's really, really good. I enjoyed the movie a lot. I think it's not one of my favorite musicals just because I do feel like it's just recycling 80s songs, but I think it's really a good way to introduce yourself to Broadway and introduce yourself to musicals and movie musicals. It's very entertaining. Rock of Ages is about a girl who, I think she starts in Kansas or Missouri or some Midwestern state, and she basically transports herself to like California and Hollywood and stuff to get a record deal and be a singer and, you know, typical. And she figures out that it's not really easy, and she ends up pole dancing at one point. So the one that kind of disappointed me, but I still like it, is Into the Woods. I would recommend seeing this show rather than seeing the movie if you can. The movie is great. I do love Anna Kendrick and James Corden and Meryl Streep, of course, but I think it kind of lost a little bit of the musical. They changed a lot of it because it was Disney, and so I feel like it leaves out a lot in the musical that they don't get to show in the movie. But Into the Woods is basically like all these fairy tale characters kind of interact, and it's really, really entertaining, really funny, also really tragic. It's unexpectedly sad. Definitely, definitely would recommend it. The Last 5 Years. I have not seen this movie. I have been trying to see it for probably the last 5 years, but it stars Anna Kendrick and Jeremy Jordan. Jeremy Jordan is actually like a really good Broadway star. I've heard really phenomenal things about the movie. The Last 5 Years is about a relationship over 5 years, obviously, and it's told in an interesting way because it starts on opposite ends. So at the beginning, one of them is experiencing the end of relationship, the other is experiencing the beginning of the relationship, and it kind of like works its way. Again, haven't seen it, don't know a lot about it, but I know it's like a new modern classic and everybody loves it. Another movie that is actually really good is Hairspray. This one came out like 10 years ago now, oh god. But it was really, really big at the time because Zac Efron was starring in it, and it's really, really great. I love that adaptation of it. Hairspray is a musical about hairspray, obviously, but I think it's set in the 60s, 50s, 60s, somewhere in there, and it's right about the time that the civil rights movement is going on. So it shows a lot of racial tension and racial diversity and stuff like that, and it basically shows the story of this fat white girl who really wants to be a singer, and it's just really, really, really uplifting, even though it's like kind of some hard content because of the racial tensions. Like, it's really inspiring, and You Can't Stop the Beat is one of the best songs of all time. If you haven't heard me talk about Joseph, let me tell you, Joseph in the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. It's done by Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's one of my favorite musicals of all time, arguably my favorite. But we're talking about the film adaptation of it, which is with Donny Osmond. I believe it's Canadian, that's how they did it, but it's really, really fun because supposedly like this school play that all these kids are going to see, and it like turns into this like actual thing of like seeing Joseph, and it's the story of Joseph from the Bible. So if you don't know, Joseph was a Bible character who had it all, and then his brothers basically were like, hey, we hate you, we're gonna sell you into slavery. And Joseph kind of works his way up and he becomes the Pharaoh, I believe. And it's just a really inspiring story. Also, it's like a Bible story, and I love the Bible, obviously, so it's really great. But Donny Osmond in the movie, one of the best. Like, I could watch that literally all day. Let's talk about those new classics that I'm sure you've heard of. And they're probably musicals that you're like, I've heard so much about this, I don't really want to listen to it, it's so mainstream. Yeah. It's mainstream for a reason, honey. The first musical I ever saw on like a Broadway stage, The Lion King. It's a classic, but it's different than the movie. The movie is great. The musical is a little bit different because it draws more from the African roots, and so it has a lot more African music, and it's just really stunning. Like, the costumes are incredible. I love the music. It's something that has gotten me through a lot of really hard times, so it just like is really important to me. It's a really great way to start into Broadway because it's really just a Disney movie on stage. Wicked, the second Broadway show that I ever saw. The first one that I really ever found myself and like started to love myself. Wicked is the untold story of the Wicked Witch of the West from Oz, and it's phenomenal. I figured out recently that it only won 3 Tony Awards, and I'm bitter about it in retrospect. But Wicked is a really great Broadway show because it it's just so catchy. Like it has really catchy music. It's a cross between like kind of pop rock and actual like Broadway style. So it's really accessible, I feel like, and it sounds like stuff that would be on the radio, honestly. Defying Gravity is just a work of art, and like, ugh, I have to say it because there are still people who haven't listened to it, but like, Hamilton, just listen to Hamilton. I'm not even gonna explain it. Dear Evan Hansen, it recently won the Tony for Best Musical 2017. I have not seen it yet. This is a really great accessible musical because the music is very pop rock. It's so catchy. Like, you just listen to Waving Through a Window. It's really, really great. Ben Platt is a genius, and I am very glad that he won his Tony, but it's really sad. It's about anxiety and a guy commits suicide, so it does have some heavy content, but that's kind of why a lot of people enjoy it, because it's helped them get through stuff, and it's really therapeutic, and like it does show some things that like we don't really talk about. Spring Awakening, this had a lot of talk in the past couple of years. It was really big when it came out, and I honestly hadn't really listened to it. I still haven't listened to it fully, but it's really, really interesting because it's set, I believe, around World War II, possibly in Germany, I believe. But it's about teenagers like discovering their sexuality, and so it's really, really interesting. They recently did a revival of it, but it was a deaf revival, so a lot of the characters on stage were deaf, and so it was really, really cool. They did sign language. Wish I could have seen it. And it stars Jonathan Groff in the original Broadway cast recording, and I believe Lea Michele was in it as well. Book of Mormon. I put off listening to Book of Mormon for the longest time because I myself am a Christian, and that's not a good enough reason for it, honestly, but I just was never really drawn to it until my friend Laura saw it in London and she really loved it. Book of Mormon has been really popular. I believe it won Best Musical a couple years ago, and now it's just like a staple Broadway show, but obviously it's about Mormons, and it's really unique and funny, and the original Broadway cast has Josh Gad in it, and so like anything with Josh Gad you can sell me on. You might be weary of it if you are religious. I have heard some people who are religious don't like it, and some people love it, so it's kind of, you kind of gotta gauge it, but it's a really good option if you're looking for like a fresh new classic. Fun Home! Fun Home is also a Best Musical winner. They won like 2 or 3 years ago, and it is based off of a comic, I believe, but it's telling the story of Alison Bechdel's life, I believe. It's kind of about realizing you're gay and coming out and stuff like that, so it's really, really moving. I've heard a lot of people really love it. I haven't fully gotten into it yet, but Ring of Keys is a great song. Especially if you're looking for more queer musicals, that's a really good option to check out. And the music is very much like acoustic-y, singer-songwriter type music, so it's nothing too overloading and it's not too Broadway, so it's really, really good to start out with. Waitress! I think Waitress is a new classic, even though it didn't really get fully recognized at the Tonys last year. Still a phenomenal show. I absolutely love it. The music is by Sarah Bareilles, so if you like love song, you'll love this. But it's a really great musical. It's based on the movie Waitress, but it's about a waitress named Jenna, and she is stuck in a bad marriage, and so she's trying to figure out how to get out of it. She ends up becoming pregnant, and she has a love affair with her gynecologist. So I love it because it's one of the funniest shows I've ever seen, but it's also really like heartbreaking and moving, and you will cry. The last one that I think is definitely a new classic is The Color Purple. This one I know very little about. I believe it's based on a book, if I remember correctly. It's all about African Americans, and that's literally all I know because I'm the worst person in the world. But I do know the opening number of the revival that happened in 2015, 2016. Super, super good. It's called Opening Mysterious Ways. They did it at the Tonys. It was so good. It's really good if you're looking for more diversity in your musicals and you want a little bit more of that Southern sound, you know? It's just really, really cool. I need to do more research into it, honestly. Okay, here is my favorite portion of the recommendations. This is called Underrated Gems You May or May Not Know About. Number 1 on our list is Something Rotten. I fell in love with Something Rotten last summer, and I'm seeing it finally for the first time in like 2 or 3 weeks. Super excited. But Something Rotten follows the story of playwright Nick Bottom, and he is trying to come up with a play that is more successful than William Shakespeare. Yes, it's set in the 1500s. Yes, it's also kind of like a rock musical. It's like Shakespeare if he were a rock god. It's just so genius. I'm so excited to see it on stage because the music is so incredibly catchy. Like, if you hated Shakespeare as a child, as a teenager, as anybody, just listen to God, I Hate Shakespeare because it's so catchy and great. In the Heights! If you've listened to Hamilton and you haven't listened to In the Heights, I don't know what you're doing with your life. In the Heights is another really great diverse musical. It's all about Washington Heights and the Hispanic, Puerto Rican, Colombian, Cuban, I don't know the exact one. I wish I did, I should, but it's more like Hispanic Latin culture, and it's really, really great because it's written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, so you know it's good. I do really like 96,000, and I think it has some great gems in there, so it's a really good one if you're still on the Hamilton high and you want to keep going. Bonnie and Clyde. This is my friend Kirsten's, like, one of her favorite musicals. I never got to see it, but it stars Lauren Osnes, Jeremy Jordan, I believe, and it's, as you may have guessed, it's all about Bonnie and Clyde. I would highly recommend Picture Show and Too Late to Turn Back Now. The next one, which is the first show I saw in New York on Broadway, was How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. I saw the revival with Dan Radcliffe, and it was incredible. It's really unexpected. Like, I went into it knowing absolutely nothing about it, and it was so funny. Like, I laughed the whole time. It's really, really cute. It's about a guy named J. Pierpont Finch who starts at the bottom of this business, and he basically works his way up to become, like, really successful. So it's how to succeed in business without really trying, and it's really, really great and funny and unexpected, and nobody talks about it ever because the music is so-so, but like the actual show itself is really, really funny. The next one is Bright Star. Bright Star was nominated for some Tonys last season, 2016. It closed relatively soon. It wasn't on Broadway for a long time, but it's really, really unique because it has a lot of like folk music, and it's written by Steve Martin and some other person I can't remember. Bluegrass, that's the word I'm looking for. Bluegrass folk stuff. The music is really, really catchy. I don't know a lot about the story. I know it's set in the 40s maybe? I don't remember, but I would recommend Whoa Mama because that's like my favorite song from that show. American Psycho. I've never seen American Psycho the movie, just so you know, but this musical is based off of that concept, and the original West End London cast stars Matt Smith playing an American, so it's really, really funny. But American Psycho is about a guy who is a serial killer, psychopath, murderer. It's so interesting because the guy who did the music, I believe, did it for Spring Awakening as well, and the music is just so weird. It's like kind of electro pop, but it has some acoustic elements in it. They do a Phil Collins song. They cover Everybody Wants to Rule the World. It's like very weird, but I wish I could see the show. But I've heard it's a very weird show. But anyways, I'm really recommending you the music from it because it's really catchy. Heathers is a show I've also never seen. I've never seen the movie either. I'm really bad at this. But Heathers is so unbelievably catchy, especially Candy Store and Dead Girl Walking. It's kind of risque, but the music is one of the best things about it, I think. I love the girl who plays Veronica. Like, her voice is just phenomenal. So if you're looking for something that's like kind of rocky, I would recommend it. It's just like very, very catchy. The last two are shows that I actually have seen, and I just saw them this season, and I have reviews of them if you want to see them. This is Anastasia. This is the adaptation from the movie Anastasia, and it'll take your breath away. It's a little bit disappointing if you grew up with the movie, but I still really, really love it. Ramin is in it. It has one of the ladies who was in Moulin Rouge. It has Derek Klena, who is so good. And it's kind of like nostalgic and sentimental, but it also has a lot of like Russian culture in it. So it's just really, really unique, and it definitely made me cry like 5 times. So I would highly recommend it. Also, the costumes and the set are phenomenal if you see it on stage. The last one, my current favorite. Last summer it was Something Rotten that I got into, and this summer I am just head over heels in love with Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. I kind of just want to make another video just talking about that one, but I loved this musical so much. I'm still bitter that it didn't win the Tonys it deserved. Based off of War and Peace. It's a 70-page selection of War and Peace. I can't remember which 70 pages, but it tells the story of Natasha, who is betrothed to this guy named Andre, who is off at war, and this guy named Pierre, who is maybe not related to Natasha, but he's a family friend of Natasha, and so he is married unhappily, and his wife's brother basically seduces Natasha, and Natasha just has some problems. It's a very intense musical. My favorite thing about it is the actual show itself. The music is good after you see it, but before you see the show, you will only really like 1 or 2 songs on it. The rest of them won't make a lot of sense, and you'll probably just be like, I don't get it. So if you enjoy the music before you see the show, I will applaud you, but I was not like that. I didn't enjoy the music until after I had seen the show, because I think the music will really remind you of the show, and the show itself is so incredibly brilliant. It just has amazing choreography. The set is super unique. The costumes are to die for, and literally the whole company is just amazing at what they do. It's so entertaining and thrilling, and my mind is constantly blown by it. So if you have the chance to see Great Comet, go see it, because it's just beautiful and I want to see it again. Oh my goodness, that was a lot of musicals. So that's literally not even half of the musicals out there in the world probably. There's a lot of ones that I missed, that I wish I could talk more about, that I wish I knew more about. Hopefully if you've never listened to a musical before and you want to get into it, those are some helpful tips and some good things to look for. Obviously, there may or may not be some productions on the internet somewhere that you may or may not be able to see from places. I would recommend not doing illegal things and just try looking for soundtracks and look for movie adaptations, because those can be really helpful. Don't look down on them if you're like, I'm a Broadway snob. They're very helpful. Okay, if you have questions or you want to recommend me something, or you need more specific recommendations, let me know in the comments and we will get you squared away. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye!